Yo, what is up, doggies? It's me, Beanie Kowloon, back at it with another video. Now, in today's video, I'd like to make a tier list on all the anthology shows that I've seen throughout the years. Now, if you're sitting there scratching your head thinking, what the fuck is an anthology show? An anthology show is a show where each episode is its own unique story with its own characters, plot, and sometimes even has different directors for each episode. I personally have always loved these kind of shows because they usually always have really cool ideas that they can flesh out in like 30 minutes to an hour. And I know there's definitely a lot of other people that really enjoy anthology shows, so I thought I'd make this tier list to help you find new shows and also share my opinions on the ones that you probably already know. Also, before we get into this, I should specify I'm only counting shows where each episode is its own unique story. I don't count shows where each season is its own unique story. So don't expect to see any shows like True Detective on this list, and definitely don't expect any shows like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to be on this list. But alright man, let's just get right into this anthology show tier list. Now we're going to start off this tier list with an absolute banger of an anthology show that I'm sure you guys all know. That show is The Twilight Zone. Now, The Twilight Zone might honestly be the perfect anthology show. It truly paved the way that anthology shows would be made for centuries to come. There's so many ideas that you can see rubbed off on future anthology shows, whether that be the sci-fi aspect that most anthology shows have, or commonly ending with a surprise ending, and having a narrator that opens up the episode and lets you know what you're about to get into. These are all ideas that originated from The Twilight Zone that you'll tend to notice in most anthology shows. And the reason so many shows are inspired by The Twilight Zone is because the show is absolutely timeless. There's just so many fascinating ideas in this show that's very well executed with some of the greatest actors of that generation. This show is an absolute banger. It's a guaranteed S tier. Alright, next up on this tier list, we got another big dog anthology show that you guys probably already know, and that show is Black Mirror. Now, out of every show on this list, Black Mirror is by far the darkest, most depressing show. The first episode is literally about the president having to fuck a pig on live TV. They go pretty dark on this show. But if you're like me and you like dark and depressing shows, this show is absolutely fantastic. Each episode tells the story of a different new technology that, it sounds like would be a dope idea, but let me just say all these new technologies end up backfiring in some way or another. Some cool ideas that this show goes over is having a camera in your eye that records every second of every day, kind of like the iPhone camera from Futurama, or a world where your whole life is just surrounded by 4 big virtual screens that does everything from playing video games to watching movies and even watching porn. Or an episode where social media becomes so powerful that it actually represents your social status in life, dictating who you can hang out with, what kind of prices you get on certain things, where you can live, basically having this social media platform being the deciding factor on how you can live your life. And there's tons more great ideas that I didn't go over. I didn't even go over my absolute favorite episode, White Christmas, because I don't want to spoil anything. If you haven't seen this show and you sound interested in it, start off with White Christmas, or don't, or save it, because it's so good. You're going to be sad when you're done with that episode. But I do gotta say, while there is some fantastic episodes in this show has seriously gone downhill ever since it's been bought by Netflix. I'll give credit where credit is due. Season 3, the first season that was made by Netflix, is actually pretty good with some pretty great episodes. It has that social media episode I was talking about. It also has this pretty cool virtual reality episode. And this season has an episode with both a troll face in it and a Radiohead song. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, funny memes aside, this show basically turned to complete shit after the 3rd season. The 4th season was pretty bad, and then the 5th season was just unimaginably horrible. There's already tons of videos on YouTube breaking down why Black Mirror is just garbage now, so I really don't have to get into it any more than just saying the new episodes, they're not good, man. But that doesn't really take away from the first 2 seasons and even a bit of the 3rd season of this show. It's just so good that this show's at least A tier. I'm putting in A tier. If this show would have just stopped at the 3rd season, this would have been a guaranteed lock for S tier, but they just had to make an episode with Miley Cyrus. Alright, this next show may be one you may not have heard of, or maybe you have, I don't know, man. And that show is Love, Death, and Robots. Now, while most anthology shows, I said I like because they have really cool, fascinating ideas, this show's a bit different. The ideas in this show, they're kind of a bit bland and they're not very fleshed out. They're usually just one character's fighting a bunch of monsters or something like that. Which, don't get me wrong, fighting monsters is still a cool idea, but it's nothing that's just completely original. But the thing that makes this show cool is each episode is animated and directed by a different person, so you get to look at all these cool different animation styles, and there's some really impressive stuff in this show. And each episode is only 11 to 18 minutes long, one episode is only 6 minutes long. So it's very rare you find yourself getting bored watching this show, because each episode's quick and right to the point. That being said, each episode being so quick and right to the point, no episodes really left me with the feeling of like, whoa, that was epic. And on top of that, this show fumbled the bag with the second season. This show definitely has its moments with some really cool art styles, but there's also some episodes that I just find really boring and don't care for the style at all. I'm feeling C tier for Love, Death, and Robots. Alright, next show, we have an absolute banger that if you had a childhood, you know this show. And that show that I'm talking about is fucking Goosebumps, doggies. Now, for any of you youngins who may not have ever seen Goosebumps, first let me just say, shame on you, doggies. But I'll break down the show real quickly for you uncultured swine who may not know of it. Goosebumps was originally a children's horror anthology book written by the one and the only R.L. Stine. But Goosebumps was later adapted into a TV show for individuals like me who would rather just stare at the pages and pretend that they're reading in school than ever actually read a book. The Goosebumps show would often have terrible acting.
Anybody? Help!
Often reuse the same lazy writing tactics and have laughably bad effects. But all this put together covering the classic stories of R.L. Stine's Goosebumps is actually a recipe for success. The lazy writing and the bad acting really just gives it this campy feeling that I personally love. And on top of this show's only covering the best stories of the Goosebumps series, so you know the idea is slap. You know, they got Say Cheese and Die, they got the Killer Sponge, they got that one episode where there's like a board game that if you play it and you die, then you die in real life. It's a great episode. I just have so many great memories with this show. I remember when my mom would take me and my brother to the library to go pick up books. I would go right to the Goosebumps section, and not the Goosebumps book section. They had the fucking show. You could just rent out the show. Clearly you would see me over in the DVD section of the library, far away from the books. But yeah, Goosebumps, easy B tier. Alright, next show I'd like to take a look at another horror anthology show, that is Creepshow 2019. Now, Creepshow 2019 is essentially just a modern day Goosebumps, except for it's a little bit darker, you know, a little bit of blood, a little bit of cussing, more adult themes in this show. Similar to Goosebumps, this show also has a lot of poor acting and writing, but seeing how this show is supposed to be campy fun, it's usually not a bad thing. But in my opinion, a lot of these episodes actually manage to end up failing to be campy fun. It just leaves you with a boring episode with bad writing and bad acting. There's honestly only like 1 or 2 episodes of this show that I really even like at all, and that being this one episode where this dude's trapped in a suitcase, and every time you hurt him, he gives you free gold coins, so these guys just end up abusing the fuck out of this dude. And there's another episode in this show where they get the book from Evil Dead and they read it out, and then all the monsters come and attack them, and it has like Bob Ross in it. That episode was pretty fun. But there's so many episodes of this show that were just so fucking bad, I don't even want to go over them. I'm just gonna put this show in D tier. Alright, this next show I'd like to take a look at is what Creepshow 2019 wishes it was. And that show is Tales from the Crypt. This show also has that Goosebumps vibe to it, but just for a bit older of an audience and a bit darker subject matter. If you like campy horror movies, this is the perfect show for you. Seeing how the show came out in 1989, everyone knows that the 80s was the best time for campy horror movies. There's something about horror that came out around that time that just always hits different in my opinion. I mean, after all, the 80s gave us Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Hellraiser, like all the big dog horror icons were birthed in the 80s. And speaking of horror icons, the narrator, the Crypt Keeper, who introduces you into every episode, is undoubtedly one of the greatest horror icons of all time. Each episode, the Crypt Keeper will open up the show with some hilariously corny puns or jokes that has something to do with the episode you're about to watch. And as for the stories that this show tells, in my opinion, it's always pretty gas. Each episode will either end with some kind of surprise ending, or the main character just getting the karma that they deserve. If this sounds like a show that you would be into, then you're in luck, because every single episode is for free on YouTube. Now, I will say the quality is not great, but I'm pretty sure that's just how shit looked in the 80s. Tales from the Crypt, undoubtedly A tier, almost S tier, but not quite. Alright, the next show I'd like to look at is American Horror Story. Now, I'm not talking about the main show that they have where each season is its own story, because I already said I'm not counting those, but they have another show where each episode is its own story. Now, this show is fucking garbage, dog. Now, I'll be straight up. I've only watched like 5 minutes of one episode of this one called Drive-In that was about someone who makes a movie that was like so evil that when you watch it, everyone like starts killing each other. Solid premise, but the writing in this show is just god-awful. Not a single person in this show talks like anyone that I've ever met.
To the Bro House, a non-stop party where the only rule is Bro Rule. And who are we? Zim.
In the episode I watched, I hated every single character I saw come on screen, and I mean, that's the reason I had to turn it off after like 5 minutes. Now, I know I might not be giving this a fair judgment, as I've only seen 5 minutes of like one episode, But shit, dog, I think that's fair enough to put it into F tier. I don't really want to talk about this show at all. I just want to throw it in F tier where it belongs. Alright, next show I'd like to take a look at is a British show called Inside Number 9. In this show, each episode takes place in a room or an apartment that is numbered 9. Now, I don't really know how to describe this show because all the episodes are just so different, but I mean, that's kind of how most of these shows are, but one thing that's for sure is each one of these episodes is going to hit you with some kind of twist surprise ending, which is always fun. My personal favorite episode of this show, and is usually widely agreed the best episode of the show, is the 12 Days of Christine. Now, I don't really want to get too much into this because I'd rather not spoil it. I'd rather you guys watch it on your own, but basically the plot of this episode is the main character in this episode's life just keeps like skipping forward like 5 years at a time or like 10 years at a time. Like she'll just wake up and it'll be 10 years later. And let me just say, by the end, it all makes a lot of sense and you're gonna be like, whoa, that was pretty cool, but I don't want to tell you what it is. Watch it for yourself. This show's smelling like a B tier to me. Alright, final show is Marvel's What If. Now this show is basically if the What If machine from Futurama was put into Marvel. Each episode will give you a crazy scenario, like what if there was a zombie apocalypse that took over like 90% of the superheroes, and it tells the story of what that would be like. Now, I'll be honest, I only did watch one episode of this show, and it's the zombie apocalypse episode, because it sounded pretty cool. And I mean, it was pretty good, but at the end of the day, it was just another fucking Marvel thing, and I mean, that's the reason I only watched one episode. It's just, me personally, I'm fucking marveled out with all these Marvel movies that have been coming out. Like, they're always a fun time, some action-packed stuff with some good comedy. And both those elements are definitely in the show. This show, it made me laugh a couple times. There were some cool action scenes, but I've just seen too much of it, and I really don't care to watch this entire show. And on top of that, in my opinion, the animation style in this show is absolutely garbage. It just looks unnerving, it's unsettling looking at these faces. Like, where the fuck's the detail, man? Why are their faces all so smooth? I don't like looking at this. But I will say, if you're a fan of Marvel, like a really big fan, this is an absolutely great idea that, you can have a lot of fun with, and I'm sure you would have a lot of fun watching this show. But this show's just not really for me. I'm feeling a C tier on this show. Well, there you have it, the definitive anthology show tier list. And if you disagree with any of the rankings I put on here, you're probably wrong. And also, if you're wondering where shows are like The Outer Limits or The Hitchcock Hour, I don't know, man. I haven't seen those shows and I didn't want to watch them. But yeah, that's my anthology show tier list. I hope you found some cool shows you can check out or just had a good time listening to me talk about shows that you already know and love. And if you did enjoy this video, please drop a like, please drop a comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And also let me know what kind of videos you would like to see out of me in the future, as I am kind of working on a lot of different stuff right now. I'm still trying to make stuff on music. I'm working on a JPEG Mafia iceberg. No one make that before me or I will be very angry. But at the same time, I do want to start making more videos talking about movies and TV shows that I like, or just making random tier lists that could be fun. And also, I've noticed I'm getting a lot of love on my DMT trip report video, and I mean, I will say, I do have quite a few good stories of me just tripping sack or just doing other dumb shit if you guys would like to hear more storytime videos. But at the same time, I do not want this channel to become one of those just drug storytime videos. No throwing shade to any of those channels on YouTube. There's quite a few that I actually enjoy. But the way I see it is I only have like 30 something plus stories of me doing crazy dumb shit. And if I were to focus my YouTube channel on that, at some point I would just run out of stories and have to either start making up stories or just start doing dumb shit again to get more stories. And neither of those are things I would ever want to do. But yeah, let me know what kind of videos you guys would like to see from me next. At the moment, I'm thinking my channel is just going to be a hodgepodge of all different kind of videos. But yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys had a good one, and as always, peace out, doggies.
Let's get lost tonight. You could be my black Kate Moss tonight. Play secretary, I'm the boss tonight. And you don't give a fuck what they all say, right? Awesome, the Christian and Christian Dior. Damn, they don't make them like this anymore.